As retired and active police officers, we all know that you can buy gear from a lot of different places, especially online. But I want to remind you of the importance of supporting companies that support law enforcement. I don't know of any company that fits that bill more than Goals. At Goals.com, their motto is proud to serve those who serve, which they do every single day. And they walk the talk by supporting dozens of focused organizations like Gold Shields. So when you're looking for gear, support our premier sponsor and go to goals.com. And for our loyal listeners to this show, use the code GOLD15 for 15% off your next purchase until October 31st. Go to goals.com today.
Hey, welcome back to Gold Shields. This is Dan Murphy, every week along with my partner in crime, Tom Smith. How are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great, buddy. Here we are again. Just another great show, another great guest that we're going to get into. But you know what? We're fortunate, bud. Every week we get to do this.
We're getting like so accustomed to having amazing freaking guests that 2 years ago we would have never had a bridge to find a contact information for. Now we have them on our show. We're very, very lucky, and it's because the show has opened doors for us and we've met people. But today we have a very special guest who I have a deep amount of respect for the work he's done. Tom, tell us who our guest is today.
Yeah, you know what? The drug world is just so dangerous and crazy. And even back in the day in the 80s and 90s and going forward with that. And there wasn't a more dangerous place in the world than Colombia. You know, we had shows that we've done on Pablo Escobar. And some people out there think, you know, once he got taken out of the picture, all right, drug trade was that, it was over. He was the big guy and he got taken care of. But that was the farthest thing from the truth, because there was another city down in Colombia named Cali that was probably even worse than Medellin and a couple other cities down there. And we have the guy who went down there with his partner and took on the godfathers of the Cali Cartel. And we're going to hear all about it right now. Chris Feistl, it's an absolute pleasure and honor to have you on.
It's great to be with you today.
Well, thanks. You know, I think we chatted briefly before we went on, and one of the things that I mentioned to you was my familiarity with, at the time in the late 80s, early 90s, because of my assignment to a task force with the DEA, Cali cocaine. It was Queens. I don't think you could have hit 3 houses in a row without one of them being a storage location for 150 keys, 200, 500, 800. It was crazy the amount of drugs coming through there. And it was all coming from the Cali section. Now, Medellin had their area. North Coast had their area. It was kind of franchised off, but New York was the big ticket item. It was the one everybody wanted to be in, and Cali ruled that. But before we get into that, tell us a little bit about how you got into the DEA. You became a DEA agent when was this again?
I got hired by DEA in 1988. So how I got into law enforcement, it's kind of by accident. When I was in college, I majored in criminal justice and political science. I wanted to go to law school. I played basketball in high school and college, and I had some contacts. So I thought, you know what? We go to law school. I could be a sports agent, negotiate some contracts, make a lot of money, and retire early, right? So the summer of my junior year in college, 1984, I went down to the Jersey Shore, Wildwood, New Jersey. So anybody who's from New Jersey, I'm sure they're well acquainted with, Wildwood Crest, Cape May. Yeah, it was crazy during the summer. So they would hire a lot of these, what they called seasonal or special police officers. And so during the summer, we went down and do a little surfing, and we were talking to some people, and they said, hey, go down to the municipal building, and I think they're hiring lifeguards and summer police officers. So that kind of intrigued me, and I went down, and, we were looking for some money, obviously, while we were there, and the summer police officer paid a whopping $5 an hour back in 1984. So I thought I was like the king, right? I was like, hey, that's pretty decent money. And, I called back to my professor. His name was in college. His name was Mr. Cotter. He was actually retired NYPD officer, and no relation to Welcome Back, Cotter. And I said, hey, can I turn this summer police officer to special police officer job into an internship? And he said, yes. So I did that. And when I was down there, I was 20 years old at the time when I got this job. I was in a bar one night, And, this happens a lot when you're out at the beach. I got talking to this young girl and she offered to sell me methamphetamine. So, we're going back and forth. I didn't really know what to do at that time, right? You're 20 years old. And I was like, you know what? I'll play along. Okay. How much you got? How much? This and that. So afterwards, I went back to the real narcs at the Wildwood PD and they set up this undercover deal. And so I went up on the boardwalk, negotiated this deal. And I thought, you know what? This is pretty cool stuff. Right. And it was at the beginning of Miami Vice. And I started looking at this. So I started looking into law enforcement, DEA, FBI, CIA, and DEA kind of really piqued my interest just because of that undercover work. So that's how I really got into that law enforcement realm, was this undercover meeting I had with this girl on the boardwalk.
Fate's amazing, isn't it? where you're going to end up the rest of your life was because of talking to a girl in a bar.
I remember when I said I wanted to retire rich, right? So obviously that didn't happen because I got into law enforcement. But so that really kind of steered me into that path. And I worked in Wildwood for 2 more summers. And then I got a full-time police officer job down in Virginia Beach. So I just kept moving further and further down the beach, as the surfing got better. So, and in the meantime, I applied to DEA. And I ended up getting hired in March of 1988 by DEA.
And where was your first office?
I initially applied in Philly, but since I got the police officer job in Virginia Beach, they transferred all of my stuff to the Norfolk resident office. So I got hired out of there. After the academy, I went back there for 3 months. So my first real duty station at that time was Miami, Florida. I got there in the summer of 1988.
All right. Now let's put this in perspective.
You can't gloss over this. Yeah.
There wasn't a better place on the earth better than Miami in the 80s. If you were
exactly right. And that's what I said when I was in the academy. First of all, I'm from Pennsylvania. I grew up in northeastern Pennsylvania, so it's cold as shit, which I hated. So when I was in the academy back then, they've changed how they assign agents. So they gave you a wish list and you had to put your top 5 areas that you wanted to go to. So they thought I was a smart ass. They put Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Tampa, West Palm, and Fort Myers. So I wanted to get into the warm weather. But besides that, if you wanted to be a DEA agent in the 80s, man, Miami was the only place for you to go as far as I was concerned. It's the home of the cocaine cowboys. Like I said, Miami Vice was on the map. It put a spotlight there. And cocaine was literally falling out of the sky. And we say that literally because a lot of times it was because of all of the air activity, right? The bales would be dropping, in the Everglades. They'd be washing up on the beaches. So to be a real DEA agent, in my mind, I had to go to Miami, Florida because of that. And also I thought, what a better place to go to learn the job, right? You're going to get thrown into the frying pan immediately. You're going to learn the job quickly. And that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, and that's what active cops wanted to do. Tom and I were 2 of those guys. You don't want to get assigned to a place that's a retirement village or a laid back. You want to work. You want that adrenaline pumping and rushing. And I'm sure you got it down there. So Miami at the time, for those who don't know, the 1980s in Miami, the drug wars and the drug violence skyrocketed so much that they had to rent out refrigerated trucks to use as temporary morgues for all the homicide victims. And that's insane. I mean, you were thrust right into the middle.
Fire, and that's exactly right. Especially in those early to mid 80 timeframes when the cocaine was really getting that foothold in South Florida, when you had Rizal Blanco and some of those people that used to work for Escobar in South Florida in the Kendall area. There was the Dadeland shootout they had, which was in 85 or 86. Yeah, massive amounts of murder, massive amounts of crime. But yeah, that was the place to be. And, everybody was busy. And my senior partner was on the job 8 months longer than I was. So as you can imagine, I'm sure it was back when you guys were working. Let's say, all right, you're here, it's your first day. Here's a case. Here's an informant. Go out. Here's a 10 kilo buy bust. Handle it. And you're like, well, yeah, I just showed up here. I don't even have a desk, and you're out in the street running around, and that's the way it was. You were doing deal after deal, sometimes a couple deals a day.
Right. And you know what? No matter where you were, NYPD, DEA, you had what we called old school guys. You want to be here? Here you go, kid. This is what you wanted. It's all yours. Deal with it. But you know what? You're so right with learning the job quick and learning it the right way by people who are just constantly doing it, and you're looking up to and you're just watching and observing, making yourself better. And while you're in Miami, you're not you are dealing with like local guys, but that's where you really start getting into the world of Colombia, right? With the trade that's coming into the United States, and then obviously hitting in Miami. So is that where, your experience and everything that leads up to where we're going to go in this conversation with your origins?
So obviously in Miami, the drug trade was controlled by the Colombians, right? So a lot of the deals that you did, whether they were by bus on the street, the cocaine was controlled by Colombians. And, I started to work a lot of like large scale transportation cases, maritime smuggling investigations. And, we had a really good setup and a really good network there. We had access to assets or informants that had coastal freighters. We had informants that had speedboats. We had undercover houses in the Florida Keys. And we had a lot of really good Colombian informants. So we would set up as transportation brokers, right? So if you go back in time, two of the major problems that these Colombian cartels had were transportation and communications, right? They were always looking for that. You see the movies, American Made, Barry Seal, the pilots, boat captains, the Falcons. They were always looking for that transportation because that was one of their vulnerabilities. So with that, we were able to do a lot of these maritime transportation cases, which trace back to the Medellin cartel and the Cali cartel. So I had a pretty good familiarity at that time of who the players were in each of the major cartels in Colombia. And, after a few years of doing that, I said, well, I'm in Miami. That's the one thing. I said, but if I want to be a real DEA agent now, I got to go to Colombia, right? Colombia is the epicenter of the drug trade. It's the Mecca. That's where everything happens. It's where the biggest and the baddest cartels on the planet are at. So I said, I got to go to Colombia and I got to work against the biggest cartels that there are.
So in Colombia, those of us who have worked in America, and Tom and I have done some work overseas. We've been fortunate enough to do that in task forces. But when you're in America, even if you're in the worst, most crime-ridden neighborhood, you know that you have help nearby. You know that you have legal authority to do things. You know that the lay of the land. You know the culture. You're part of it. It's very different than finding yourself in a foreign country, in a hostile foreign country, where not that long ago, members of a cartel in Mexico took out a DEA agent and tortured him. It's not something they wouldn't do. They didn't want to do it, but it's not something they wouldn't do. So now you're down there and you can't even have a day off without looking
No, exactly right. And and Bogota was a little bit different, which was where the embassy was at. You can get out and move around a little bit more. There was more of an American presence. There were a lot of multinational corporations and stuff. But when we went to Cali, and for the longest time, we were embedded in Cali with the search block, right? Everybody knows about the search block, the military and the police units that were established by the government to go after the biggest and baddest narcos and hunt them down, arrest them, and kill them. But when you were operating in Cali, and a lot of times we were out there on the safe houses on our own, you had nobody there. Our backup was 210 miles away at the embassy. And if you made a mistake or you screwed up there, you were in a world of hurt. And when we got to Colombia for years, it was the most dangerous country in the world. It led the world in homicides. It led the world in kidnappings, and it had the two biggest cartels, on the planet. So it was a very hostile environment. The corruption was systemic throughout all of the institutions, and you could not help but to look over your shoulder every single minute that you were there, no matter what you were doing. And in Cali also, there was zero American presence, right? None, absolutely none. And the minute that they saw myself and my partner, Dave Mitchell, during the day, we were immediately identified as either DEA or CIA operatives because there was no other American presence there. So we had to do a lot of our covert activity at night. under the cover of darkness between, 9, 10, 11, 12, 2, 3, 4 in the morning just to get anything done so that we weren't compromised. And, you look at me now, it's kind of the same, right? I'm 6'2", 6'3", blonde hair. My partner's a good 6'3.5". Looks like he could play tight end for an NFL football team. So there was no camouflaging us in Cali, right? We stood out, and that was a running joke when we got to Colombia too, because they were like, dude, you guys don't blend in, man. How the hell are you going to get anything done in Cali? You guys are going to stick out like sore thumbs. But, we failed and failed and failed. But, from each failure that we did, we learned, and we finally progressed over a couple of years to figure out, hey, this is what we need to do, and this is how we need to do it to avoid being compromised and to get the job done.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the two of you, I've seen the two of you, you don't blend. You're not blending into Colombia by any stretch. Two questions. One, were you in Colombia when Escobar got taken out? Were you there? And two, at what point do you and Dave go, okay, we're going after the biggest guys in Cali, and let's get this done?
Dave and I, it's kind of funny because we went to the academy at the same time. He was in the class ahead of me. We both got assigned to Miami, and we both got selected to go to Colombia at the same time. And when we got selected, it was probably in the fall of 1993. So Pablo was still alive at that point when we got selected to go to Colombia. So I thought, man, this is the greatest scenario on earth, right? I'm going to be going to Colombia while Escobar and the Medellin cartel, or at least Escobar is still alive, and the Cali cartel were there. I could go after both of these guys, or both of these cartels. But before I got to Colombia, we had to go to language school. You had to do a couple things. Escobar was killed, right? So he was killed before I got into Colombia. But we were assigned ahead of time to the Cali group. So I knew that we were going into that group to go after the Cali cartel because we had that background in Miami. We knew the players were, we had a pretty good understanding of their network and their organization and their tentacles into Miami and into New York. So we got assigned to Cali. But no, I got there a few months after Escobar was killed.
Okay, so, well, for those who are listening who want a frame of reference, if you haven't seen the Netflix series, and there's 3 seasons of episodes of Narcos. Now, we previously had on the show Steve and Javi, and they're tremendous guys. We've met with them in person. They're phenomenal people, and they shared their story as you did with the producers and writers of Narcos. The first season is about the Escobar hunt. The second is about your hunt.
So there's 2 seasons
that
cover Escobar and the Medellin cartel. Season 3 of Narcos Colombia covers the Cali cartel.
Okay. All right. I got it wrong. But in any event, you had some creative input with
it. So, definitely talking about Javier and Steve. They're great guys. I work with both of them. I worked with Steve in Miami for a while. I worked with Javier in Colombia during our second tours when we were there. And, the Netflix guys, the next logical spinoff after Medellin was to go to the Cali cartel. And the producers of Netflix were asking, hey, who can we talk to about Cali? They dropped my name, went out there, covered everything about the Cali cartel. So I kind of laid out everything that happened, how it happened, when it happened, how we dressed, this and that. And, of course, but it's a television show, right? It's entertainment. So I'll tell you what happened and how it happened, but you guys have that creative liberty, right, and option. And, you guys do what you need to do to make it a successful show. But, I'll tell you how it happened and what really went down. So they were great to work with. Netflix, whatever product they put forth is always very, very good. Whether you happen to like the show or not, what they do is very good. The writers were good. They spared no expense. They tried to create or recreate events, just as they happened. So they did a phenomenal job in that series. And I think it was very, very popular with the viewers.
Yeah, no doubt. It's so great. And just how they do it and the story, and the action, all that good stuff. But what I want to get into is how do you do it, Chris? Listen, Dan and I have run cases, we've run investigations, we've started them, not to the level of getting a cartel. That's like Dan and I being in JTTF saying, all right, we're just going to go after Al Qaeda. How do you get everything you need together to hopefully get the results you ended up getting? How does it start? How's it pitched?
Well,
What do you
yeah, I mean, it was a very long and arduous process. And just to give you an example, so when we first get to Colombia, we get there in the summer of July 94. And so we had a couple of good assets, a couple of good informants that had some ins to the Cali Cartel leaders. And we actually had one that was meeting with them. So uh, I go to the management staff at the embassy in DEA and I go, hey, look, Dave and I, we got a couple good leads. We need to go to Cali and follow up on these. And the response, like, it's blew me away. It was like, we're not sending anybody to Cali now. It's too dangerous. I was like, well, how are we supposed to investigate the Cali Cartel? They go, well, you have to do it from the embassy in Bogota. I was like, what kind of strategy is that? How are we going to do that? So they told me the story about what happened, and I think they portray this pretty well in the first episode of Narcos season 3, is that there were 2 other agents that were there prior to us, and they were working in Cali, and they got their photograph taken by the cartel, by a double agent. There was actually one of their informants who was actually a cartel double agent. And the photograph came back to the embassy with a source who said, look, Cali Cartel knows who these guys are. They know where they stay. They know their names. They know where they rent their cars. They know where they go eat. And they can have them pretty much at any time. So, of course, the knee-jerk reaction, oh, my God, it's a threat that nobody can go to Cali anymore. It's too dangerous. So we weren't allowed to go to Cali. So after, a week or so, we were like, every day, look, we got to go to Cali. We got to go to Cali. We got to go to Cali. They said, we got permission from DEA and the ambassador. But now check this out. This is what they tell us. They said, okay, you and Dave can go, but you need to be back by nightfall. You can't stay overnight. What the hell are we supposed to do in, 8 hours on the ground? Well, do what you can, establish liaison with the military and the police search block, and then we'll figure it out later. All right. Okay. Sounds good. Good. Right. Yeah.
make sure you
Great
call
plan.
it before you go to bed?
Great plan. So that was one. The second one was, under no circumstances, and the reason I tell you this story is because when we get down the road, you're going to see how crazy this was. Second one was, you cannot leave the police or military base without a police or military escort under any circumstances. So we could not go anywhere at any time without an escort. And then the third thing was, of course, no cowboy shit, right? DEA, they know how you are. No unilateral action, no cowboy stuff. Say, okay, right. So we go over, we meet with the colonel in charge of the military, Colonel Velasquez, who's a very good guy. And we also met with the colonel in charge of the police search block. So we end up coming back, and everybody was happy. Oh, you established a liaison with them. But how hard is that, right? You go over and talk to them. Okay, we're DEA. We're here to help. So we come back, and then we start to make more frequent trips to Cali, right? So then we start spending the night. Then we start spending several days. Then we're spending weeks there, and we're embedded with the police. But we noticed that all of the operations that we're doing are compromised, right? And it's like what you see on television a lot of times. You go in, we do a search warrant, you go in and there's a cup of coffee on the kitchen table and it's like steaming, right? And then there's like a half-eaten piece of toast, but there's nobody there. So we're like, look, obviously this is compromised, but we're working with the search block of, 100 or 200 cops. How do you know who's corrupt? So we had to be, and we get criticized for this a lot, but it was the only way we can get our job done. Was we had to operate under the assumption that everybody we were dealing with was corrupt, right? So we had to really compartmentalize our information. We had to lie to them where we're getting information from. We're telling them, look, we're going to go here when we're actually going over there. So it was very, very, very difficult at first to get anything done because of the systemic corruption that the cartel was able to have the influence over these military and police special units.
So now, under Escobar, he had the policy of plato o plomo, right? You're either going to work with me and take my money, or I'm going to fill your head with lead. It was either or the other. So now in Colombia, that being the way it is, you have cops down there making not a lot of money, putting their lives and their families' lives, because these cartels thought nothing of slaughtering the family. It was nothing to them to do that. Whereas in America, it's really not that common. You're not going to see that. But they've got that going on. You can't trust anybody. You're embedded with this group. It's got to be horrible. I mean, Tom and I have worked among people who you find out later on, this guy was doing this or this guy was doing that. But to be surrounded by doubt as to who you can talk to, that had to be a terrible way to go.
It was, and it was frustrating because, here we are, trying to get these operations off the ground. And a lot of times you're getting this information from these assets who are on the ground, and you're extremely worried that they're going to get compromised as well. So, you're not only worried about the integrity of an operation, you're worried about the lives of some of these assets that are working for you. And it was very, very difficult. And, just to kind of jump ahead, I'll tell you, on one of the raids that we did, we found, this staggers my mind till this day. We found documents in a hidden compartment in a desk that revealed 2,800 corrupt officials, 2,800 in one raid in one location. And that wasn't all of the corrupt officials that these guys were paying, right? This was just one little segment that we had. So these guys were corrupting thousands and thousands of government officials, police, military, judges, prosecutors, you name it. They even donated and contributed $6.2 million. Some estimates are up to $10 million for the 1994 presidential election in Colombia that got the president Ernesto Samper arrested. And they outlined that very well in season 3 of Narcos. So, they had from the bottom all the way up to the top infiltrated. And that's what made our job very, very difficult, was how do we avoid this infiltration and the corruption in these units? And it took us a long time to figure out how we could do that. And I'll tell you, one of the ways that we did it was because we had to violate every one of those rules that the ambassador and DEA told us that we couldn't do, right? Never leave the police space without a police or military escort. Well, we ended up getting safe houses, and we had to work on our own unilaterally to do all this stuff and collect evidence and do our own surveillances, do our own reconnaissance, plan all these operations on our own to avoid the corruption. So it was pretty hectic and pretty intense at times.
Looking for powerful defense without the mess? Meet Impact, a revolutionary line of chemical irritants designed for law enforcement, military, and personal protection. With no blowback, no cross-contamination, and easy cleanup, Cali Impact delivers unmatched stopping power without the hassle. Whether you're in the field or on the street, safety should never be compromised. Protect yourself with the next generation of defense. Cali Impact, stopping power redefined. Have you ever wished you could go back in time and see the events that shape the true crime cases that fascinate you? With newspapers.com, it's like having a time machine to the past. Dive into more than 1 billion newspaper pages from 1690 to 2025 and relive the headlines that shocked entire towns. Explore newspapers from the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and beyond with a simple search. Read the breaking news as it happened, crime scene reports, witness testimonies, and courtroom drama. Explore forgotten clues and see how the media shaped the narrative of infamous cases. But it's not just the major stories. Newspapers.com lets you dig into local mysteries, missing persons reports, and the small-town scandals that history forgot. It's the closest you can get to being there when it all unfolded. So, if you're ready to dig deeper into the crimes that keep you up at night, start your journey today at newspapers.com. Use the code GOLDSHIELDS for an exclusive 20% discount on your subscription.
Our job, whether it's a DEA, NYPD, whatever, is stressful enough, just on an everyday basis going on a street, much less worrying or thinking about every single moment who you're standing next to or who you're talking to or what door you're going to go through that might be just an absolute setup. And, I think of it this way. I think of all of that and then fast forward to the result you got, and what blows my mind that you were able to work through that and navigate that into getting the group that you needed to do this case. And that's impressive as hell, Chris. And I'm not just saying it because, you're in front of us, but looking at it from, two guys who did it around the world, it's hard. And for you to get the results that you did, not, hey, yeah, we locked a couple of guys up, we got lucky, we broke through the bad corruption, but, getting the results you did is as impressive as
I appreciate that. And we had a lot of good help towards the end with some of the special units, and I'll get into that a little later on how exactly we did that. But, when we were at the police base too, every time that not every time, a lot of the times when we left the police base, we were followed, right? So we were constantly under surveillance, whether it was by the cartel, whether it was by corrupt police officials, or whether it was by, taxi drivers who the cartel employed as their eyes and ears of the city. And by some accounts, they had up to 5,000 of these taxi drivers on the payroll that all they would do is drive around the city and look for suspicious, people who were there, i.e. Americans, right? If they got Americans in their taxi cab, they immediately called the cartel. The cartel had all the hotels wired. So if anybody stayed in a hotel, they would know about it. They had the airports monitored, right? So if you flew in and they saw Americans coming off a regular plane, everybody knew you were in town. So we had to fly into the Air Force base, which was away from the international and the public airport. And it was constantly jumping through hoops, right? Looking over your shoulder. Our safe house, check it out. It was like a version of Home Alone, right? So we were always concerned, and you brought up Kiki Camarena, right? DEA agent who was kidnapped and killed in 1985 in Guadalajara by the cartel. So that's always on your mind, right? That's embedded into your head in the academy and safety and everything that you do. So we were constantly worried that the cartel would try to find out where our safe house was, and two, try to forcibly take us out of there. So when we got our first safe house, it was right around Christmas or right after. So we used to hang bells from the ceiling so that if they opened the door, it would make a major ruckus and wake us up, right? And we would stack. This is the really good security system here. Check it out. We would stack empty beer cans behind the door as a backup, right? So if they opened the door, it would knock them over and make a big sound. So, and we had like a 2-bedroom apartment, but we always slept in the same room. We had sets of bunk beds. So we figured like, hey, we might as well stay together. We had all of our weaponry there and we were in the same room. And, here's another funny, it's, some of this stuff is funny now, but at the time it's not funny. Right. So, we had a car, right? We had a white Jeep Cherokee and it was armored, and we had it parked in the garage in the assigned parking spot of our apartment. So we were always worried about the cartel finding it and putting a car bomb right on the car, because let's face it, between the war with Cali and Medellin, there were car bombs going off almost on a daily basis back in, from 88 to 93. So this was our plan. This is another really strategic move. So we would go down before we'd leave, and of course you had to start the car, right? So we're like, look, let's alternate. So you start the car one day and I'll start it the next day. So while one person would go and start, this is a true story. I'm not kidding. While one person would start the car, we had those huge concrete support columns in the garage. The other person would go behind the concrete support column and put their hands over their ears just in case the car bomb went off. And we joke around, go, well, there's no sense in both of us dying if a car bomb goes off. So we alternated who would start the car every day. And we did that every single day that we were there.
It's amazing that that's what you had to do, and it makes perfect sense. But it's just amazing that that's what you had to do. So there was a lot of names that became quasi household names that came out of the Cali Cartel. The Rodriguez brothers, of course, the gentlemen of Cali. But you and your partner managed, at least if you believe the show, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, to develop a source of information that was invaluable ultimately to the case. And I'm talking about Mr. Salcedo. Is this correct? Tell us about Jorge Salcedo, what he did for the cartel and what he did for you.
So Jorge Salcedo is kind of a long story. So I'll give you a little background on him so it makes sense. He was a mechanical engineer by trade, and he was also a captain in the Army Reserves. And his father was a general. So his father was a very well-respected general in the military. And while he was in the reserves, he ran across some of these British mercenaries and these soldiers of fortune. And the Colombian government asked him to recruit these soldiers of fortune, these mercenaries, to bring them into Colombia to try to launch some kind of operation to attack the FARC. FARC was the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia. It's a left-wing Marxist, Leninist guerrilla group that had been fighting the Colombian government since, probably the 50s or the 60s. And they came into Colombia, although the operation never went forward. And the Cali Cartel found out about this. Of course, they knew everything that happened in Colombia, and they kind of recruited him to come to Cali, and they wanted him to use these mercenaries and these soldiers of fortune to go and launch an operation to kill Pablo Escobar. And, this is another thing that's like straight out of a movie, and there's a sequel to this movie, and I'll tell you about that too. And so what they wanted to do is they brought 12 of these mercenaries in from the UK, and they wanted to launch like a 2-helicopter assault into Hacienda Nápoles, which was Pablo Escobar's 7,400-acre finca, where he has the big zoo where you see the hippopotamuses and everything, while he was watching a soccer game. And these mercenaries were going to land on the finca, get out, and they were basically going to kill everybody at this party, including Escobar. So this was their plan. So these 2 helicopters take off. They're pretty close to Hacienda Nápoles. They hit bad weather. One of the helicopters crashes, kills the pilot. A couple of the mercenaries are badly injured. So the operation gets scrubbed. So he gets basically recruited to the cartel to launch this operation. So imagine you get a call from he doesn't know who he's meeting at the time, right? He kind of gets lured to Cali to meet on a business meeting. So he talks to the Cali Cartel leaders. So what do you say to that when they tell you, hey, Salcedo, we want you to use your mercenaries to kill Pablo Escobar? What are you going to do? Say no, right? You can't tell the leaders of the Cali Cartel no. They just revealed their plan to you. And if you said no, you were probably not walking out that door alive. So he really didn't have a choice. So he commits to okay, look, I'll help you kill Escobar. He's an enemy of the state. He's a bad guy. But when he's done, when he's killed, I get back to my life. That was the deal. I get out of the cartel and back to my life. So, of course, the cartel, they agree, but then they renege. When Pablo is finally killed, he tenders his resignation, and they go, no, you're not going anywhere. And he knew why at that point, because he knew too much, right? He saw too much. He knew everything that was going on in the cartel. So that's how he gets involved into the cartel.
That is, like you said, it's a movie. I mean, we've all dealt with sources and stuff, but to that level is incredible. So now you have the source, like we all hope for when we do cases. You want that gold nugget of a source. Like Dan had said, now he turns and starts working for you. What's the invaluable information that he provides to just push this case to where you and Dave are probably going, all right, we got this. We can do this now.
I'll answer that in a second, but let me tell you about the sequel to the movie, right? So the second operation that the Cali Cartel plans is they send Salcedo to El Salvador to try to buy 4 500-pound MK-82 bombs, right? So they figure, well, the assault didn't work. Let's just buy a jet. They wanted to buy a Dragonfly. We'll put a 500-pound bomb on the jet and we'll drop it on Catedral, which was Pablo's prison, right? That was their plan. So that's the sequel to the helicopter assault. So that's your question. So in early 1995, so we had just taken down at this point Gilberto Rodriguez, right? So who was the other leader of the Cali Cartel, along with his brother Miguel Rodriguez, Chepe Santa Cruz, who was of New York fame, and Pacho Herrera. They were the 4 leaders of the Cali Cartel. So we were able to get 2 sources and take down Gilberto. So the walls were starting to crack, right? So Salcedo thinks to himself, look, this is not going to end well. I'm either going to get arrested or I'm going to get killed, and I need to find a way out. So while he was trying to find a way out of the cartel, Dave and I were trying to find a way into the cartel, and we were finally able to hook up with Salcedo, and it kind of made this perfect storm, right? He had all the intel, the actionable intel and information to locate Miguel Rodriguez, who was the head of the Cali Cartel. And of course, we had the resources and, everything that we needed to help him. So this is a good story too. So we finally are able, I talked to him on the phone, right? We're going back and forth for a little bit, trying to recruit him. And I talked to him on the phone and he says, okay, I said, hey, we're in Cali now. We should try to meet. If you're serious about trying to help us bring down Miguel Rodriguez and the rest of the cartel, we need to meet. We're in Cali now. And he's like, okay, meet me at 3:00 this afternoon. And he gives us a location, right? So he goes, meet me at Ciat. And we're like, dude, are you kidding me? Ciat's 1 hour from where we're at in Cali. And it's in the middle of nowhere. It's these massive sugarcane fields, but Ciat is an agricultural development center. And I'm like, dude, you're the head of security for the Cali Cartel. I'm not going to meet you in the middle of a sugarcane field 1 hour outside of Cali. And it gets worse because he tells me, you have to come alone. I'm like, no, I'm not coming alone. And by I have the phone on speaker and Dave's like, no, we're not going to Ciat. We can't meet him. I'm like, look, we're not going to meet you at Ciat and I can't come along. So finally he says, okay, you could bring your partner Dave, but it has to be at Ciat. And I said, no, let's meet closer to the city because I'm thinking we need something that's going to afford us some protection and some cover. And then his response to me is, no, because if we're seen together, it's not going to end well for either of us. So I'm thinking to myself, dude, I'm honest with you, dude, we're scared shitless at this point, thinking we're going to go meet this guy. So we finally meet him in a sugarcane field 1 hour outside of Cali at 3:00. And we met him that first time for 3 hours. And within 10 minutes, we thought, like you said before, man, this is the guy, right? If he doesn't get killed and he ends up being truthful and follows this through, this is the guy that we're going to be able to bring down the rest of the cartel with. Because, and you know how it is when you start interviewing these major guys, right? So he's the head of security for the Cali Cartel, right? He's not some low-level flunky. So you just can't go in there and ask this guy a bunch of stupid questions, right? He's going to see right through it. And, so we asked him a lot of questions we knew the answers to. And he was very upfront. He was truthful. And we're like, man, this is right. Where's Miguel at now? He's at this part of the city, which we knew he was. So, and you can just tell we're like, man, this is the guy.
So Jorge Salcedo is portrayed in the Narcos documentary series as being an incredibly resourceful guy, very good with everything from bugs and equipment to wiretapping. He had an immense insider's baseball knowledge of the cartel itself. Was he able to actually record any conversations or take records and bring records to you, or in any other way like that help you if you can discuss
it? Not initially, because he was actually very, very worried about meeting with us and, trying to go after the cartel, after Miguel Rodriguez, because if there was one mistake made And the cartel found out not only was he going to get killed, but it was going to be his wife and his children. So he was very terrified of that. And as were we. That was our biggest concern, was just keeping him alive. And we had the burden to carry around every day, like, hey, too, if we screw up and make one mistake, we could cost him his life too. So initially, it was like, hey, I'll try to give you information to pinpoint where Miguel is at. You guys launch a raid and arrest him. So initially, that was our plan, was just to try to take down the leader of the Cali Cartel at that time, was Miguel Rodriguez.
That's a hell of a goal. and then reaching it is incredible. So when you know what, I was just thinking of this, and this is our show, our questions come as the show goes on. You're not doing a search warrant in the Bronx, hitting an apartment on Jerome Avenue. How do you lock up the heads of a cartel? I mean, is it done just like that's it? Like it's a raid, you hit it, you grab them. How are you locking up the guys?
Well, as you know, is when you work overseas, you don't have arrest powers, right? So I can't physically go out and arrest someone in a foreign country, right? We have the Mansfield Amendment, which basically says, in narcotics, we're prohibited from making direct involvement of arrests in a foreign country. So what we had to do was utilize the Colombian National Police or the Colombian military to go after these guys. And i.e., that's where the problem was, because the cartel had those units completely infiltrated. And just a side story, what they would do is the military had a polygraphed section of their search block. And they would polygraph these guys every 12 to 18 months. But the cartel knew when they were going to polygraph these guys. So once they passed, they would the next day would approach them with a huge bag of money and go, here. Some would take it, some wouldn't. But the ones that would, they had 12 months or 18 months where they could get information from these guys. So leave it to the cartel to once a guy is proven to be honest, they would corrupt them, right? So they would be able to get this intel. And a lot of times that's why these operations were being compromised, was because of these officers who the cartel was paying. So what we had to do was we had to utilize these polygraphed and vetted units from Bogota, 200 miles away. They were assigned to the intelligence community. They were assigned to the CIA. So anytime that we would do an operation, we had to bring them overland from Bogota into Cali and avoid the search blocks because of the infiltration in Cali. So that's how we were finally able to get units that we could trust and that we could work with, was to bring them from Bogota into Cali. And we would launch these raids. And of course, if we found someone, we had prosecutors with us and they would arrest him.
This is Twilight Zone stuff. It's the kind of stuff you never could have envisioned when you probably raised your hand and swore in as a DEA agent that you'd be involved in or that you would see. It's surreal.
Talking to the girl in the bar.
Yeah.
All because of that.
It all started in Wildwood. So just for our audience's sake and for the sake of actually Tom and I, because we think we know, but if you had to put a number on the amount or the kilos or cubic tons, whatever it is, of cocaine that the Cali cartel was responsible for distributing through the streets of just America, and how much cash they handled throughout the course of their tenure, if you could put a number on that.
So at Cali's height, they were responsible for 80 to 85% of the cocaine that reached U.S. soil and 90% worldwide. They dominated the cocaine trade on 6 continents, and if Antarctica had a drug problem, it would have been 7. And they were making billions and billions and billions of dollars every year. Now, some estimates are 8 to 10 billion that they made in a year. But I always, and I get criticized for this too, because I always have issues with the numbers that the U.S. government puts out, because they downplay the numbers, right? They want to make it look like DEA, the U.S. government, and the Colombian government is more successful than they really are. So you can say 10 to 15 billion dollars a year that they were making. Now, as far as cocaine wise, some of the official estimates that they threw out were 350 to 400 metric tons of cocaine a year that Cali was doing at their height, right? To me, that's grossly underestimated. I'd say you can almost double that and say it was 750 to 800 metric tons a year, which is ridiculous. It's crazy amount of cocaine, because I can quantify this by, if you go back in history, you go back to the Silmar seizure in California, where they seized 20 plus tons of cocaine in one shot, in one raid. And they recovered documents there that showed exactly how the cartels were getting the cocaine into Mexico, how they were driving it up into Juarez, crossing the border into El Paso, and then tractor trailing this into LA. And they found records that showed that over a 3-month time frame, they moved 77 tons of cocaine, right? So that's a little bit over 25 tons a month. But that's only the one route we're talking about. That's through Mexico. What about through the Caribbean corridor? What about the containers? What about these other ways that they're getting it in? So those numbers to me are like grossly underestimated.
You can't even wrap your head around that. You can't, with those numbers and the amount of cocaine that came into the country and the dollar amount. You can't wrap your head around that. That's wild. But here's what you did, dude. You got them. I mean, that's the best part of this. You can rattle off all those numbers, which is great. And you got the guys responsible for that. I mean, it is, again, we all set off on our careers to have a good career, have some fun, get some good cases, all that. But you just took Chris to the highest level you could think of, which, God bless you, and Dave as well. So what happened once you get them? Were they tried? What happened with their cases? Time they're doing? What was the result of all that?
Gilberto Rodriguez gets arrested as a result of surveillances that we do with some of our DEA assets in June of 95. Miguel Rodriguez let me backtrack. Chepe Santa Cruz, the number 3 man in the cartel, gets arrested in July of 1995. Miguel Rodriguez gets arrested in August of 1995. So 3 months, it's back to back to back, boom. And then the fourth godfather, Pacho Herrera, who was also very key and instrumental in New York, he gets arrested in September of 1996. So at this time, there's no extradition of Colombian nationals from Colombia to the U.S., right? That once Pablo surrendered in 1991, that was part of the agreement. I'll surrender as long as I'm not extradited. They changed the constitution. No Colombians are eligible for extradition. So these guys get sentenced in Colombia to not a lot of time, but Santa Cruz ends up escaping from prison. He gets killed later on. Pacho Herrera gets killed while he's in prison. But the two Rodriguez brothers, they continue to traffic while they're in prison in Colombia. And this is the reason that the U.S. government always wants these traffickers in the U.S., these kingpins, because they're not going to be able to sit there on a cell phone and run their business from a supermax prison in Colorado, right? This is not going to happen. But in a foreign country, these guys were living like kings. They had their own, suites. They had maids. They had liquor. They had TVs, and they ran their business. But what happened was, for the Rodriguezes, Colombia changed the constitution again. So they passed an amendment to the constitution that said, drug traffickers now, if you're trafficking past December 17th, 1997, you are now eligible for extradition to the United States. So what happens is they continue to traffic, new charges get brought against them in New York and Miami, and ultimately the two Rodriguez brothers get extradited to the United States. Miguel gets extradited in December of 2004. And Gilberto in 2004, Miguel in early 2005. So they ended up in the U.S. Gilberto died in prison 2 or 3 years ago. Miguel is still currently in prison in the United States.
Patriot is a premium whiskey hard seltzer. We've carefully crafted 4 flavors that not only taste exceptional, but can be enjoyed on any occasion, anytime. We're committed to giving back 5% of all profits to the core groups we call the backbone of America. We are proud to help those who serve our great country. This is America's Seltzer, the brand that stands for quality, community, and the American spirit.
When it comes to the safety of law enforcement, first responders, and military personnel, every moment counts, especially in the dark. Streamlight provides the reliable, high-performance lighting solutions that these heroes trust in the most dangerous situations, whether it's a car stop, navigating dark alleyways, or exploring abandoned buildings. With Streamlight by their side, our heroes can tackle challenges with confidence, knowing they have the power of advanced lighting technology to guide them. From the first responders on the front lines to the law enforcement officers ensuring our safety, Streamlight is there to make every mission a little easier and much safer. Join us in supporting those who protect us. Visit Streamlight.com to discover how you can be part of the team keeping our heroes safe. Because when they shine, we all shine.
Unbelievable. I mean, talk about the Mac Daddy of cases. These guys, you just rattled off the numbers, the sheer numbers, but what you didn't go into, and we could do all day about, is the amount of violence. There's no such thing as a drug trade without guns, violence, shootings, death, lives ruined on both ends. It's just devastating what this stuff did to our country and to the world in many ways. We had millions of families destroyed in this country because of cocaine addiction, because of cocaine violence, because of crack, because of all the stuff that came as a result of these guys making their fortunes. Not to mention the thousands and thousands of police officers killed in Colombia, the civilians that were killed, innocent ones, the people involved in the trade whose lives were ruined. I mean, it's just incredible, the spider web of disaster that comes as a result of this. So being involved in this case and having the tenacity you and Dave had to do the things you had to do, to work within the constraints you had to work with the unbelievable stress on you of having to look over your back constantly, having to wonder when and how many times your work has been compromised and whether or not you were going to wake up with a gun in your face. This is big, big stuff. And I have so much respect for you guys, and thank you for doing it. It's the kind of work few people would have the intestinal fortitude to do. But, I mean, what an incredible case, and I can't wait to read more about it and hear more about it. But, wow, thank you, Chris. Thank you for sharing that part of it.
You know, we always say in law enforcement, too, is timing is everything, right? So I was fortunate enough to be in the right place at the right time for a lot of different things, right? I was in Miami at the right time during the 80s. I got selected to go to Colombia at the right time. And, you know, I think there's a little bit of luck involved in that, too. But it's, you know, you talk about the lives lost and everything. And, you know, you have to really give credit to the Colombian special forces and the Colombian prosecutors and everybody who did this on a daily basis as well, right? No one has sacrificed more in the drug war. It's not really a war. I think it's a skirmish, but fighting terrorism and drug trafficking than Colombians, right? Thousands and thousands of people lost their lives. A lot of guys that we worked with, not necessarily in this case, but other cases when I was in Colombia. I worked in Colombia for 12 years. I did 3 separate tours. You know, we had whole units get, you know, murdered, gunned down on operations. So they're the real heroes here because they've sacrificed more than anybody else. And they knew too about a lot of the corruption that was going on there too, but they went out there every single day too and took it to the mat and tried to make their country a better country. So even in the book, we dedicate in the beginning to all the Colombian security forces that dedicated their lives to, you know, fighting terrorism and drug trafficking.
Well, what a segue, because that was my next thing I wanted you to talk about. You're also a best-selling author, you and Dave, after Escobar. Tell us about the book, how you and Dave came up with it, where it is, everything
So it was
about
actually Dave's idea to write the book because, it's funny when you look back, and when we were doing a lot of these things, we'd be doing our own surveillances at night at 2:00 in the morning with binoculars, sitting in the woods, getting eaten by mosquitoes, trying to see what was going on. And Dave would always say, this would make like a great movie or a good book. And we would say like, that's not going to happen. We got like 20 years left to work. I mean, we're never going to do that. And he goes, no, but this is like really good stuff and people aren't going to believe a lot of it. And I was like, yeah, well, we'll deal with it later. But so when I did Narcos, I retired from DEA in 2014, 26 years of service. So, but Dave was still working with DEA. So if you notice in season 3, they don't use Dave Mitchell's real name. They make up a name, Daniel Van Ness. That's because Dave was still active and working with DEA. So when Dave retires in, I think it was late 2021, he tells me, he goes, we should write a book now. Now that I'm retired, let's write a book. And I'm like, dude, I don't want to write a book. I got enough shit going on. That's the last thing that I want to do is sit there and write a book. He said, come on, let's do it. So I thought about it and I said, all right, I'll make you a deal. I said, we'll draft up, and anybody who knows or is an author who's been through the process, for nonfiction, you have to write up like a book proposal. It's this whole kind of elaborate formatted thing you have to send out, and you have to try to get a literary agent. So I said, we'll do this. Let's draft up the proposal. We'll send it out, and if we get a literary agent, we'll pursue the book. And he goes, okay, fair enough. So we drafted it up. We sent it out. We got a literary agent pretty quick, and he kind of shotgunned it out to a couple people, and we heard back from a publisher and said, hey, this, we like the proposal. We'd like to publish the book. So that's how the book came about. And so it was authored by myself, Dave Mitchell. We had a really good collaborator, Jessica Balboni, up in Massachusetts. And we put together the book, and we tried to include, a lot of stuff that wasn't really in Narcos season 3. Some of the stuff that we had gone through, personal stuff, other events where, we had wives of assets who were murdered and killed, kidnapped by the cartel. We've got a lot of that stuff in there. So I think anybody who has an interest in, the drug war, the 80s and 90s, what happened between the Cali and Medellin cartels, and just it gives you that, it's from our point of view, right? So it's like when you're reading the book, it's kind of like you're there with us, right? So it's you're seeing what we saw, you're hearing what we heard, you're feeling what we felt. Like, we're not shy about telling you, like, you know what, when we met Salcedo and Canefield, that wasn't a good day, and we were scared to death, and it was, things like that. So it's out on Amazon now. It came out June 24th, and it's doing pretty well at this point.
The book is After Escobar. I can't wait to read it. I tell you, Chris, I can't wait to read it. I'll hang on every word. And I can't wait to see the next thing you're going to work on, because you just have such a passion for what you did in your career and so much knowledge in your head and experiences and stuff. There's lots of stories running around between your ears, I can just tell. And if you haven't watched Narcos, watch it so you get a frame of reference for this conversation, for the story. But understand also that's television, right? And there's more stuff here. And usually the real stuff is more interesting and crazier than the fiction. So I can't wait to read it.
I hope you enjoy it. And there's a lot of stuff in there that you kind of, you can't, they always say what truth is stranger than fiction, right? You can't make it up. And I'll throw you a couple little tidbits is we talked about the infiltration of the search block. So when we get to Cali, our main liaison in Cali is a captain. And he was always kind of, and you know how it is when you talk to somebody, you just don't get that good vibe, and you're like, man, I don't trust this guy. And he ends up being the main spy for the Cali Cartel that they're paying, is this guy that is assigned to be our liaison. And he's a captain. So that was one where we kind of saw it coming, but when we got official confirmation, it was like, you got to be kidding me. And, there's another one where Salcedo is a man of many talents. He drew us a picture of another guy, like a sketch. And he says, you need to watch out for this guy. He's also a spy for the cartel. And we look at the sketch, and I kid you not, you would have thought this was like a professional police sketch artist who drew this drawing. And I remember telling Dave, I go, dude, if we see this guy, we'll recognize him immediately. From this sketch, there's no doubt. And sure enough, man, we were on an operation, and this guy shows up in a vehicle when we're trying to hunt down Pacho Herrera, and he gets in the car, and that's the guy in one of our special vetted units right there with us, another spy that got inserted into the cartel to track our movements and to report back to the cartel on what DEA was doing.
Yeah, you know what? I don't know what's more impressive, that you locked up the cartel members, the biggest in history, or you're not dead.
Right.
I don't know which one's more impressive. But they both are. And thankfully, one happened and one didn't, for sure. But Chris, listen, you should be proud of yourself and Dave. You were here, and you threw a lot of, people around you that helped and all that, but it doesn't get going without you too. You spearheaded this, and you deserve a lot of credit for it. You're very humble in kind of passing it around, but from two guys from the outside who are from law enforcement and know what it takes to do a case, not to this level, but, big cases, you should be really proud of yourself and commended totally for, what you guys did.
And on top of that, you are owed a debt of gratitude from America and other countries around the world, because the takedown of this case and the stopping, even though we all know drugs and stuff find a way, but the bringing down of this empire, no doubt saved lives, no doubt saved cops' lives, innocent civilians, and people all around the world. So that, and you're right to commend the Colombian National Police and the security forces down there who dedicated themselves to it, the ones who managed to keep straight in a room full of corruption. There's a lot of honor in that, and we
yes, absolutely, and I appreciate the kind words. And they're the real heroes here. And like you said, without them, we could not go out there and physically put hands on these guys. So we had to work with them, and we established a good friendship with a lot of those guys that were working there every day. So and some of them didn't make it, and that's who that book is dedicated to, and those are the real heroes in this fight.
Well, the book is After Escobar, Taking Down the Notorious Cali Godfathers and the Biggest Drug Cartel in History, on top of the next, the Narcos show. Season 3 is all about your case. Chris, it was an absolute honor, and Dan and I both mean that, to have you here on the show and telling your story.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, guys. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. And we will be right back with OT. Don't go anywhere, Tom. Parting shots, things you throw out at the very end. We're thanking our guest, Chris, and just a phenomenal show.
Yep. Just this part of the show, we always, say a prayer for our law enforcement officers, state, federal, local, whatever they are, doing a thankless job every day, putting their lives on the line, on the street and in big cases like you just heard. And we do it because we love just doing it. And it's about keeping everybody safe. And please say a prayer for them. Thank them when you see them on the street, pat them on the back in the store, and also throw a prayer to the families, because they go through it just as much. People being away from home, people in harm's way. So keep them in your prayers as well. A shout out to our two main premier sponsors, goals.com and tacticalgear.com. Make sure you go on goals.com, use the promo code GOLD15 until October 31st. Get 15% off your items that you purchase. That's on Goals for all our listeners. And check us out, our website, thegoldshieldshow.com, youtube.com/@goldshields, and every audio channel you can think of. Thank you again. Like Dan just said, don't go anywhere. We got overtime coming up. For Chris Feistl and my partner, Dan Murphy, this is Tom Smith for Gold Shields. Everyone out there, stay safe. We'll see everybody soon.
As promised, we're back with the OT, the overtime. Cops love overtime. Tom, what else do they love?
They love good stories.
Oh,
And we just heard one. I said it on the show, man. I don't know what's more impressive. Taking down a cartel, which happens once in a lifetime.
Once every never.
Right.
Yeah.
And once every never is perfect. But living through that.
Yeah.
And Chris explained it, and I hope everyone gets it, how dangerous that was. I mean, you didn't know, and he explained it, Dan. He didn't know who he was talking to, who was standing next to him, what door you're going to go through, if your car is going to blow up tomorrow.
Right.
My God.
Well, or if one of the cops that you're working with, who you seem to get along with every day, is giving up your route here and there, and you're going to get assassinated. And because these guys thought nothing of that stuff down there, they only held off a little bit on the DEA. But if you were really a thorn in their side, they would do what they did to Camarena in Mexico, and they wouldn't look back. There's too much money involved. So for 12 years, he lived and worked in Colombia under that threat of violence, that threat of betrayal, destroy all the work that they're doing, getting thrown out the window. We used to get pissed off if somebody gave up a warrant that we had and we didn't get the 4 ounces of coke and a gun. Now, this is a guy that you work for years on something and people are giving you up and undermining you right in front of you with a smile on their face.
And then, to have all that on your mind and then stay focused enough to take a cartel down. Not lock up, like I said, not locking up a deal on Jerome Avenue. You have to stay focused enough to take a cartel down, which is an absolute different mindset, world, investigative tempo, strategy, everything. And to worry, like wake up and go, okay, cool, I'm awake. I made it through the night. Let's go get these guys.
So he
absurd.
He had the balls, him and his partner Dave, to go to Cali when the DEA itself was saying it's too dangerous. It's too dangerous. There's no Americans there. We have no infrastructure and backup. We have nothing. You'd be completely on your own. You'd stand out completely. You've got the cops and the military giving you up. Half of them are paid off, or a percentage. And you've got the whole community is benefiting off what's going on in the Cali Cartel. Thousands of people working for them, informing for them. All sorts of revenue streams going around and happy to keep going around. And you're coming in looking to disrupt it?
Yeah. It's, and the numbers, Dan, that he rattled off between money and weight. Like, think of us, okay? In the Bronx, we hit a spot and got 2 keys. You were like praised.
Jubilant.
Praised. Awesome. Dan, the case that Carlos got, we got 125 keys. That was epic. These guys are getting 800 tons that they stop.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Incredible.
It's wild.
And like I said before, one of the most important things to me is drugs and money are one thing, but all the death, all the violence that had to do, both here in America, in the cities and small towns, everywhere, there was death everywhere, from overdoses, drug robberies, retribution homicides, internal discipline within the drug crews, all of it, you name it, a trail of dead bodies for years here and abroad because of these guys.
I mean, Dan, look at the time frame. Me and you were working in the city, cleaning up homicides because of the people that Chris was going after. It was connected. It was all connected. All the drug things that we saw, the homicides, the shootings, the drug robberies, all that, all had to do with the guys that Chris was going after. All the way up in New York.
And I was in the task force with the DEA at this time, and I remember running around, and I was doing Asian stuff, but we frequently were called to jump in for surveillances and for takedowns and stuff with the Colombian team and the Dominican team, and the stuff that they were coming across was unbelievable. I mean, they'd be disappointed they only got a car stop with 25 kilos in it.
Right.
And when you're on patrol, you're like 25. You would never envision to see that, but it was just so much up there,
And it's hard to, even though we're in this job, even for us to wrap our head around what they did is hard to do because of the mindset that you need to do that. It's not a case. I mean, it's not. Yeah, it is technically, but you know what I mean? It's not a all right, let's just go do this. What had to be done is just a completely different level.
And they have no real law enforcement authority. They're advisors
None.
and intelligence gatherers, and they have to work with the locals, so they can't go out and slap cuffs on people. So they are hamstrung by that. They got bureaucracy, they got all kinds of laws. And so they managed to work around that to bring down the largest cocaine supplying cartel. I mean, down. That's an epic, epic achievement.
Yeah, it's amazing, and everyone needs to, watch Narcos, for sure, and get the book after Escobar, and get a really firsthand account of even more. Just for all you listeners out there listening to Overtime, we talk after we do the show for a little while with Chris. Everything you heard for an hour, Chris said was 5% of what actually happened. Think about that. We just heard an hour of just how this was done, and it's 5% of what actually happened. And the book's going to take you through the other 95%. So make sure you get it on Amazon and all that.
Yeah, tip of the iceberg. And we want to thank also for our sponsor for the overtime, which we want to throw out a shout out to Fairline Services. If you want security services, the highest grade you're going to get in this country, fairlineservices.com. A wide variety of services. Check them out, look them up, give them a call. I've seen a lot of security services come and go. I've worked with a lot. I trust Fairline. They're great people. Fairlineservices.com.
Absolutely. No doubt about it. First line of defense, top rated security service, and very proud that they're part of our show and overtime and all that. And, I mentioned before goals, tactical gear, Streamlight, all our top supporters. Love them all.
And if we left you out, don't be mad at us. We're trying here, okay?
Newspapers, Patriot. Yeah, Impact. We got to throw Impact in there.
Just had our head blown by a case that's like historical to say the least.
Yep, and we're gonna have him back on.
Oh yeah. Oh, we got one we talked about. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
You're gonna like this.
you're gonna hear from Chris again soon. But once again, to end it, thegoldshieldShow.com, youtube.com/@goldshields, all our audio channels, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Hook up with us and keep supporting us. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Dan. Another good one, buddy.
Outstanding. Outstanding. Thank you, Tom. Another great one. And we will talk to everybody soon. We'll be out there. Thank you to our audience, too. We would not have anything here if we didn't have people tuning in, listening, giving us a download, giving us a chance to watch us on YouTube. If you can't stand the look of our faces, you can just listen to us on Spotify or Buzzsprout or any of the other outlets that we're on. So,
Like I do. I don't watch, I listen.
I don't want to see me. Bad enough I got to shave my face in the morning. Never mind look at it. All right.
All right, everyone. Have a great night. Thanks again for joining us. Everyone stay safe. We'll see everybody soon.